Hello and welcome to another episode of the SME Focus Show brought to you by FactoryNOW TV. I'm your host, Chris Greenough, and in this series we will focus on SMEs within the British manufacturing sector. Every week we will discuss and analyse the opportunities and challenges facing the industry in these unprecedented times. I've worked in the sector for over 26 years and I am CCO at STE Technology, one of the leading manufacturers of pressings and assemblies in the UK. So as you can hopefully appreciate, this show is very much for manufacturers by manufacturers. Joining me this week is a fantastic guest, Nat Macaulay, Managing Director at JCM Fine Joinery. Nat, welcome aboard.
Hello, thanks for having me, Christopher.
You're welcome, good to speak to you. So tell us about JCM Fine Joinery and what exactly you do.
Okay, JCM Fine Joinery, we're a bespoke joinery manufacturer based in the beautiful Black Country out of Halesowen.
Yep.
The business has been around for nigh on 30 years. I bought the business back in August of 2019, and I'm ashamed to tell you I did not have a global pandemic in my business plan, but we're still here. And JCM quite simply stands for Joinery and Cubicle Manufacturing. So we're a small business, but we're very fortunate to have two divisions. Commercial bespoke joinery, as I've said, and then we also create these commercial washroom solutions as well, which have become a key focus in these times of enhanced hygiene, I can tell you.
Absolutely. So you bought the business just before the pandemic hit. Obviously 2020 was a very tough year for business. How did you manage the business through those toughest of times?
Great question. It's emblazoned on my brain that night we all went home to listen to the Prime Minister. Yes. And, I'm ex-military, and all I can tell you is I think my military training kicked in, because you really don't panic, you do stay calm and you carry on. But joking aside, we really did just get back to basics. We held daily briefings, and if there was one key thing I would take away, was that we had to think for ourselves. Nobody knew the situation, nor the government, nor the public health experts. And so very much in terms of what it meant for our business, we tried to think for ourselves. We took in as much information as we could, but we had to make our own decisions as well.
Absolutely. So I remember 2020, the last week in March, we went into lockdown. We put most of our staff on furlough. Nobody really knew what was a safe working environment. It was really tough, and the furlough scheme sort of started, but there was very little information to start with, and it was even the government were learning week by week at that stage. So the growth plans that you had for the business, I guess your investment plans stalled straight away as soon as you bought the business. How do you see the next 5 years? What plans did you have that are now sort of coming back to the fore?
Well, we've just completed our financial year actually at the end of March, and obviously that was the year of COVID. And I have to say, I would never have estimated at the beginning of the COVID pandemic where we would have ended up. I literally just, reset my expectations, and rather than focus on a revenue target or a profit target, EBITDA, whichever, it became, very simple. It was get this business through. We have to survive.
Yes.
And I'm pleased to say we're here on the other side of it. So we have gone back to the business plan, and we have now included the global pandemic. But, joking aside, we're being pretty realistic. And yet again, we're taking in lots of information, both from our sector, more broadly, and coming up with something that we think is realistic, albeit it's still a very big unknown in there in terms of what will happen with COVID.
Absolutely, but now we've got the vaccine rollout, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Certainly a much better position than we were in last year, and actually UK manufacturing seems to be in a much better position than most of the world. So what do you need as a small SME? What do you need from local and central government now to come through the pandemic, to kickstart your business? What support do you need?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't pause for a moment and say thank you to the government for the support that it has provided small business, because I tell you for naught, I've been at the front of the queue on most things. It was about preserving cash flow, right? Cash flow was going to
Yes.
get us through this. So yeah, we have taken a lot of support from the government, and hopefully we'll be able to repay that if we make it. So in terms of going forward, though, this one's a really easy one to answer. And as a small business, comes down to business rates. Business rates, in my opinion, has always been a stealth tax. It's been a way of central government not funding local authorities then having to rely on local businesses to make up that shortfall in their funding. It is the one tax, and I'm going to call it what it is because it's a tax.
Yeah.
It's the one tax that I can't justify. I've got over £11,000 of business rates that goes out every year, and the impact on us I have nothing to show for that money. And we have business plans that have to show a return on investment, and I've literally got nothing to show for that money. And just to give you a sense of the scale of this, we obviously get the 19% corporation tax. Based on our last year's profit, that means if you include business rates, we are being taxed over 30% on our profits. That's massive, for a small business. So obviously there is changes afoot on the corporation tax, and if we are fortunate to make more than £250,000 in profit, we'll be taxed at 25% by 2023. But hand in glove, we have to see business rates reform. You're hearing this loud and proud from the high streets anyway, and for retail business, no question. But I really think that has to go further as well for businesses like mine. As I say, we just can't see any return for that investment.
Absolutely. And I mean, business, obviously, we don't mind paying taxes when we're making profits, but you need to be able to show something for it. And as you said, it's really central government pushing it out to the regions. And they're having to pull this money in from businesses because the lack of funding from central government. So what else would you ask for Boris and his team to be doing? I keep asking, I think we should see a real push to buy British. There should be a push to reshoring as much as we can. It's got to be commercially viable, and the quality's got to be right. But then we prefer UK OEMs to buy from the UK supply chain.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. That I am an admirer of free market forces, and whilst we may have free ports or special tax zones in the UK, which I'd be all for, I don't know that I would cause the government to buy British. I think by the time they build a bureaucracy around how to do that, it will be inefficient. I would far rather leave it to free market forces. That if you've got increasing import taxes right now, hopefully UK buyers are going to look to the UK market first, because it should, in theory, de facto be cheaper.
Absolutely. And when you look at escalating transport costs from the Far East, eventually it will be that we are competitive again. And then the quality and the improved supply chain, that's where we should make the savings. So in terms of your business now, how many people have you got within the business?
We've got 10 people.
Okay. And all making product, or some in managerial or purchase roles? How many have you actually got making the product? 10 people. 10 people. So it's fantastic. So a real SME looking to the future. So how do you see the rest? Now we are hopefully, fingers crossed, through the pandemic. How do you see the rest of 2021 panning out?
This was a great question for me to just pause and reflect on, which as business leaders we have to do. Yeah. And not to be too cute about it, I've basically got an ABC for you. And the A really is around acceleration. So any change that was already afoot, I think, simply is going to be accelerated. Yeah. We've seen that on the high street. Sadly, that change was already coming, but the move to online shopping. So anything that was already happening, changes in the world of work, I think clearly we have seen a change. That said, we've also had a fantastic opportunity to realise that people need people, and we're not all going to be sitting in little pods in our houses. So I do think there will be an acclimatization there for people to get back out and socialise. So that's the A. The dreaded Brexit word really got usurped, didn't it? But I think Brexit, we are still seeing an impact in our business, good and bad, I should add, around Brexit. And that is the importance of manufacturing to this country. If you ask, I think the man on the street, they would say that we don't have a manufacturing sector in this country. It actually accounts over 15% of GDP. It's hugely important, and reference to your previous point, will become increasingly important as we try and stand on our own 2 feet and trade outside of Europe. And there is lots of talk about levelling up the UK, and manufacturing, way more than the service sector, is going to drive that engine. So I think manufacturing is an incredibly important sector to be. And as I've seen anecdotally all the way through the pandemic, manufacturing didn't stop.
Absolutely. So really, your ABC, you're looking at a stronger manufacturing sector going forward. There are changes in the way people buy, the way people shop, and the way people work. But all of this, the pandemic, as you say, has just accelerated that. And it is a changing market, and companies now need to embrace a different way of selling, a different way of making.
Yeah, and the C obviously is COVID. You've mentioned the vaccines. Absolutely incredible progress out the UK. It was one thing that we could really hold our head up about with the global community. That said, I am cautiously optimistic about the success of the vaccine programme. We are not out of this at all, and I am concerned that just because we are re-emerging from lockdown, that people think that's it and COVID's gone away. But it really hasn't gone away, and we don't know over the long term how effective the vaccine program will be. And unlike things like smallpox, which we have now eradicated, we haven't been able to eradicate things like flu. And I think COVID is going to follow that sort of flu pattern where the variants, the mutations with the disease, are going to keep us on our toes, sadly, for some years to come.
Absolutely, and hopefully it will just be a case of a booster once a year, like the flu vaccine, but at least we can get on top of it and we can stay on top of it and hopefully get back to normal. Nat, thank you for your time today. It was absolutely great to talk to you. And my takeaway, my ABC, is absolutely brilliant conversation. Really good to talk to you. Fantastic to hear about your business, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks very much. All the best to you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of another show. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to meeting more of our brilliant SME manufacturers like Nat next week and those involved in the sector. If you would like to get in touch with the show with a comment, a suggestion, or even to appear on a future episode, please email us tv@mtd.media. Another fantastic show, another fantastic guest. So from me, Chris G at STE, goodbye.